Hello. How's everybody doing? How many of you have had your clients go, hey, I hear that the market has picked up. There's all kinds, there's news media saying the market activity has picked up. Is my house going up? I've had that 3 times so far, just in the last 4 days. So the consumer, just as we talked about, the consumer finds out about the activity after we already see it. And in certain pockets of Toronto and certain pockets of certain areas, the activity has picked up. And yeah, there are certain areas where a place that sold in October is selling for more money today. But that's just hot pockets. Okay. So how do you manage that conversation? Come on, smart people. I'll tell you how I did it yesterday, but I want to hear how you guys do it. How do you handle the conversation that you know you're going to have? You got a seller or a possible seller, and they're going, I'm reading that, the activity has picked up, and my understanding that, my the prices are going up. And yet we know that in certain pockets they are, but in particular listings, they're not. How do you explain that? Better figure it out if you're going to have listings.
I think you just explain to them that there's micro segments in certain areas that they defy logic. Sometimes, like right now, a Durham region's doing really well, but there's certain reasons for that that may not expand to the rest of the market.
Good answer. Okay.
I,
Now, is
I, I,
it
te-
better?
I tell them if you're in a price point where a first-time home buyer could potentially buy, that's the sweet spot because there's lots of people trying to downsize into that market. First-time buyers are trying to jump in that market, so you got a bit of activity there. But that house better be turnkey because most buyers don't have renovation money.
Good point. Okay. Now, is it best to come from you verbally, or are you best to use a tool? Both, right? So what tool can you use to fine tune an area? Market stats is one of them, but
It's not current. Sometimes it's a little bit behind.
yeah, it could be a little bit behind, but you have your own, you can do your own MLS searches and fine tune it to a particular area using a map. Like you can draw a map and say in this area, what's happened in the last 30 days. The other thing is don't forget that you've got that home price index. Everybody, lots of times agents forget about using that. And that you can put right down to neighborhoods. Okay. So if you use the tools, and I had to do this yesterday. So I have a builder and we have a builder listing in Thorold, and in a particular community called Rolling Meadows. And he's hearing, oh, I'm hearing that with the buyer incentives for new construction, activity is going to really increase. Buyers are going to come out of the woodwork. They're going to save all this money. And I said, that's great. Yeah, that's a possibility, but they're still looking for value. So if you think you're going to be putting the houses back on the market that you had 2 years ago at the same price, just because they're getting incentives, they're not going to sell. Oh, well, why not? Well, because the values have dropped. So I ended up having to do, I was trying to still get another price reduction on the one we have listed. He's also talking to me about his 5 other lots plus another property that was the model home. I went through Rolling Meadows, and I literally printed out every listing that has sold since January 1st in that area. Printed out every listing that's for sale right up until yesterday before we were having our meeting. And Mason sent everything to him beforehand and said, look, here's what we're going to discuss. There were 14 sales in that area. Highest sale was 815, and it was a bungalow, new bungalow. out of the 14 sales, 9 of them are freehold townhouses, selling between 500 and 600, first-time buyers. And we're in a price range where, like in the competition, where the houses that are 4-bedroom, 2-story, 2,500 square feet, they're not moving. There's no way I could have had that discussion with him just verbally. Okay? So you have to make sure you're using the tools, because there is going to be some mixed information that they're going to be receiving. And this is from a builder who's, in the marketplace. So imagine what an individual consumer is now thinking about their product. So anybody else had that question recently from your sellers or possible sellers? What about the question, well, with the market changing in this activity, should I wait and hold off listing? How do you answer that? Well, this is real life questions that you're having if you're doing listing presentation.
I know I had that question even for that house in Scarborough.
Yep.
I said, yes, you can. And chances are spring will bring up more buyers, but more listings too. So it'll be like, again, plus and minus, we don't know. But she had a rush to buy her mom's house privately, and she'd rather get rid of it quickly. So I said, in that case, we list it. I mean, we sold it after a proper reduction, but, and even when people ask about the values, I'll always say that each pocket it varies from pocket to pocket. If the supply is very high in that neighborhood, things are going to have more competition. People will be trying to shop around first to get a better deal.
Yeah.
But if there's nothing listed, that's the best time, whether it's winter or summer, it doesn't matter. When there's nothing listed, that's the best time to list. So buyers don't have a choice.
Supply and
if they
demand.
want to live in that area.
And that's what we're seeing in certain pockets of Toronto. Right? So how would you answer that question?
Currently, I'm talking to a good friend of mine who purchased a pre-construction condo back in 2022, right at the height of the market. It's a 2-bedroom condo in Hamilton, and he purchased it for $880 back in 2022. They just started the construction this year. I think they're on the 4th floor. It's a 32-floor building, and he bought unit 29, so on the 29th floor. And yeah, that was a real heavy conversation, because he's like, I want to list this, let's go. And I'm like, hold on, let me show you something. And then I showed him data of what's going on in that area. And yeah, the blood left his face, because he realized that that condo now most likely would be about $500,000. The only thing I said to him was, I go, listen, the only silver lining right now is the builder is set to complete this in January of 2027. I don't think they're going to hit that, because they're only on the 4th floor right now. I don't know what the market is going to be like in January. So right now, silver lining, we can wait and see what happens. The only other option we have right now is for you to talk to the builder and find out what's going on, because you're not the only one. Whoever bought during that time is going to be in the same situation as you. And I don't think the builder is in the business of, screwing people over. Something has to come from this. So that was the conversation. So right now we're at a wait and see.
Yeah. And you're going to be in a wait and see, because the situation with that particular building will be how long before that's actually ready. The option, though, that you could look at is what are the assignment rights within that agreement of purchase and sale? And the question is going to be is how much deposit does he have there, because the fact builders are sticking to their guns, by the way. If they have a firm agreement of purchase and sale, majority of them are sticking to their guns and basically saying they're doing credit checks on existing buyers to see if they have any other equity, any other financial wherewithal to be able to say, fine, because if they don't close, the builder has the right to sue. So, okay. But as far as somebody, let's say, that's looking at, do I sell, do I list now or do I list in the summer or do I list next spring? How do you direct that?
My first question for anybody that approaches me to say, hey, I'm thinking about listing, I always ask, I try to find out the reason behind it, right? Is there a reason that you want to list today or in the next 2-3 months? What is the reason? Is it a financial reason? Is it you're an empty nester now and now you want to live near your kids? Like, what is the priority of listing it? Because if it's a financial one where you are really in a situation where your mortgage and your pay is, you're really in a bad situation, let's look at that and see what the numbers look like. But if it's something that you can wait, I always tell people wait if you can.
Yeah. And you're right. You got to ask the questions. What's the motivation? Is there a specific timeline? Right. And because what you have to look at is if somebody's in a position today and they're going, well, I could wait for 6 months, I could wait till next spring, then what are the factors, right? What is it? Why are you moving? Because as we've noticed, and you can use recent history to explain to people, we have no control of outside influences that can derail a market, such as tariffs. If you would have talked a year, 6 months before Trump was elected and decided to do these tariffs, the discussion on the market was spring of 2025 is going to be a crazy market. We're going to get back into being busy. We're going back into seeing prices rise. Well, then the tariff situation came in and it derailed everything. And just as we think we're getting through the tariff situation, all of a sudden there's a war and there's what they call the oil shock. Interest rates are climbing, uncertainty. So those are two specific references that you can use and say, look, we can't control what the market is going to go. We don't know what it's going to be 6 months from now. We don't know if something's going to happen next week. But here's what I can tell you today. And if under this situation today, this fits your reason for moving, then I suggest you look at it. But if you're okay with the possibility of, we're hoping, what we're hoping for is the tariffs all get figured out, the new agreement gets in place, the war and situation with the oil gets rectified within the next 4 or 5 months, then we would be looking at a normalized marketplace where we would have usually a busier fall, quieter winter, and then a busy next year spring. But if that doesn't happen and rates rise, then the buying power of the consumer dwindles, which means that they're not going to be able to afford exactly what they could afford today. Somebody waiting. So all I can do is give you the information today and we can project out. But if you're okay taking that risk and going, it's not really going to affect me, I need to wait for that time because of this, and then you know how to handle that. But one of the things you have to be cautious of, and that's why it's really important, and just as Herbert says, you got to find out what's the motivation, what's the timeline. The other thing you need to find out, is there anybody else that is responsible for making that decision? Are there family members? Are there kids that are saying, especially if it's a move down, are there other family members that are giving guidance on that? Or suggesting instead of, hey, mom, instead of moving this spring, you should wait until next year. And then you're going in and going, oh, this is why I think you should move now. And then she's going to talk with the son and the son's going, oh, yeah, you're not dealing with that realtor. He's too pushy, right? So make sure that you understand who the decision makers are too when you're talking about, is the timing right or not? Okay.
I had a situation just like that where somebody wanted, it was a senior, he wanted to list the house, and the son and daughter were 100% involved in that decision, and though they didn't live there, and they were saying, nope, nope, your house is worth 2 million, 2 million, 2 million. And I was showing him the data, and I'm like, at best, maybe 1.5. And well, the kids lost their minds. They're like, no, no, 2 million, 2 million. And sure enough, what ended up happening? He sold it for 1.5. So I was dead on with the number. But it is difficult because it's here you are trying to show data, showing them the actual what's going on. And you have others who are whispering in the parents' ear saying, no, it's worth this amount, stick to your guns. And of course, the other agent listed it at their price. Of course, it didn't sell, and then they finally reduced it to a realistic number, and then of course it sold because, but again, they bought the listing somehow. So yeah, it's frustrating, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and that can be frustrating, and that's where sometimes it's making sure that the decision makers are involved in all the conversations, so that you can see or hear the body language or voice tone of the decision makers, the people doing the guidance. But good for you for being, hey, this is where the value is, and if you want me to come in and bid for the listing and just put any price on it, we can certainly do that. That's fine. But then understand that we're going to need more time for either the market to adjust. So if you're okay with a 6-month listing, I'm okay to do that. And away you go. So activity-wise, like what have you seen over the last week, since we chatted, or even the last couple of weeks?
More sold signs.
More sold signs? Okay.
Than normal.
Okay. More sold signs.
In my
I'm
immediate area, in Brampton here, there is multiple homes being listed now in my walking distance of my home. And I'm always checking the system just to see, well, what's going on? Like, what are people thinking in terms of price? And one listing really, made me angry because the person listing that home used 4 different agents to list the same home in a consecutive level. And it started off at 1.4, which was just absolutely ridiculous for this area, and 1.3, then 1.2, then 1.1, and then the last agent finally sold it for $1,050,000. So 1.4 to $1,050,000. And that just now, the other homes in that immediate area are all affected because they're all identical. It's all the same homes. And one home now is listed for 1.2. And I'm like, what do you do there? It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And you're getting that because, again, consumers are they're getting bombarded with so much information and outside influence from friends and things like that, that in this kind of market, you have to take longer term listings. Okay. So if you're dealing with somebody that is going to be overpriced, not huge motivation, and basically says to you, well, I want you to take it only for 60 days, make a decision. You're better off to work on something else unless there's something magical happening in the marketplace. So if you are going to be looking at having a seller that has time on their hands and wants a higher price, just make sure you get the listing at least 6 months. Okay.
And that's a good point because I think we've lost listings because we only did the standard 2 to 3 month contract, and we knew it was overpriced. But yeah, you lose listings because it's like, well, now it's terminated. See you later, and then they'll list with another agent way lower, and we're like, we could have, we could have done it at that price too.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why the longer listing is important. Okay. And it's easier to get the longer listing right at the beginning than try to get an extension. Okay. So what's happened? what's been going on in the last, who's had listings, who had sales? I know Nancy's not on the call, but she did want me to let you guys know. She's had a couple sales, picked up a couple listings. So, she says all of a sudden it was just like, and maybe Elroy, you can, I know you mentioned this a little bit, but she said just in the last week, seems activity, people looking more in the north, and I don't know if it was because we had a little bit of spring weather, but she said all of a sudden the activity, now she's also been working her tail off quite a bit, so she's worked, she's generated a lot of activity herself. But anybody else all of a sudden see the activity increase, people that were sitting on the fence?
Seeing a little bit with the snow melt, but yesterday's cold weather and today's cold weather seem to hit the brakes again. But
Yeah,
I'm assuming next week it'll pick up once it starts getting milder again.
okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing
Right.
so much activity too, like Guelph and surrounding area. I'm doing another home inspection today. I've never done so many deals in this spring, so I'm very excited.
That's
But
great.
thank you. I'm finding that the buyers I'm getting are coming to me motivated. Like it's a little bit different, I think, than maybe previous years. They're like ready to go, and are trying to capitalize before they envision it going a little bit crazy. Like I think that their mentality is trying to get in before the like PTSD madness of like a few years ago. I think that they have that at the back of their head. So
Good.
there's a lot of
Good for you.
interest. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, any of the offers that I know you meant was there multiple offers at all, or just anybody doing
No.
that, holding off offer presentation yet there?
I'm seeing
Okay.
it a little bit, but it's all like they didn't price it low enough to garner multiple offers. So then they're relisting a bit higher and that whole game.
Yeah.
This
Yeah, I
year.
just saw that here. Yeah, we had one in Mississauga here at the 4-bedroom, 2-story, Lorne Park, northern Lorne Park area. Originally listed at $1,795,000. Canceled the listing, put it on at $1,499,000. Held off, waited for offer presentation day, had 3 offers. Then we get a message. Despite having 3 offers, the seller expectations weren't realized, so they canceled the listing and brought it back out at $1,590,000.
And like at that close too, like it's not a huge price
Yeah.
spread. Wow.
Yeah. So, again, gets down to motivation, right? So I can tell you that there are buyers out there. We've got some, we're fortunate enough now, we've got some really buyers that, we've been chatting with, educating and saying like, time to go.
All first-time home buyers.
Yeah, all first-time home buyers, which is great. So all my older friends, it's their kids her age. So now she's dealing with all first-time buyers. And we were able to sold a place in Lorne Park. It was actually a power sale through Home Equity Trust. So we got that one done last night for $1,550,000. So it's always fun dealing with the bank and got first-time buyers, and it's great that I know her parents really, really well, and I just said this is going to be a process. But we ended up going back and forth, and ended up was listed at $1,685,000, got it for $1,550,000. But we've been working on that a month, so which is pretty cool. And so, but again, activity is there. More listings are coming out, but you need to be able to really educate your buyers and your sellers, because they're all going to be getting, especially the sellers, they're thinking, even the builder, when I talked with the builder, I said, yeah, market unit sales have picked up. Not pricing, but unit sales. And I said, and that's why I had to go through. I said, and unit sales in your particular pocket have actually picked up, but not in the price range where you're listed. I said, and you're listed at, $949,000. I said, there's one that's bigger, finished basement at $859,900, and it isn't sold yet. So that's what's going on. You just have to make sure that you are watching the market all the time and relaying that, keeping them educated. So, any other thoughts? What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
I read an article recently regarding the increase of mortgage defaults, and I wonder what that's going to do to the market if we're going to get a influx of now, power of sale homes and condos. What's your thought on that?
There's always a segment of those type of listings that will be in the marketplace. Always was until 2015 to 2022 when the market was strong, interest rates were lower. We didn't see that. So that segment is just coming back, but it's always been there. The thing to realize with the power of sales, which this one was that we sold, majority of them are going to need a ton of work put into them, depending on how they were left, what condition were they were left. Were they owner occupied and the owners were polite enough just to leave, or were they tenanted and the tenants got kicked out? So you've got to have, like the one we sold, it actually was owner occupied. And the issue with that was, unfortunately, senior person, the trustees took it over. The house sat empty for over a year. So, and then Home Equity Trust, who had the mortgage on it, finally put it into power of sale. I've seen other power sales where I've walked through and they've been in good shape. So I don't think you're going to see enough of them to affect where the market is. Elroy?
Yeah, so good topic, power sales. My question is, how do we attract that business? I'd love to be the listing agent on those things because I'm a bit weird. I like those cleanup properties and those challenges. I'll take those on any day of the week.
Yeah, a lot like Home Equity Trust, they basically and CMHC, they'll put tenders out to certain companies and you can bid for their business at a certain time. And when I talked with Home Equity Trust, I asked the guys that are handling the account, and Scott, he said, we probably have another couple hundred that'll be coming up all over Ontario. And I said, that's great. I got offices all over Ontario. I said, if you've got a listing coming up, let us know about them. But to try and get into a power of sale relationship, you really need to be dealing with the person that makes those decisions for that financial institution. Or there are some mortgage brokers that do a lot of business with certain institutions that will the odd time get a power sale that they could refer out. So it's to get the listings for power sales, you really have to, I would target, if you're going to look at trying to do that, target the private lenders first, because the big institutions, Home Equity Trust, the CIBC, if it's CMHC insured, it goes back to CMHC, the banks automatically get their money. And then CMHC will have a tender that they sometimes have put out. I've not seen one from them in a while, but that's typically the way you'll see any power sales.
Okay, good to know. Approach my mortgage brokers. Start there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know
Mortgage-
I've got three coming in the next month or so, and maybe a fourth. But yeah, they were just out of the blue call. Really.
Yeah. But if you are going to either work on listing a power sale or a situation where Tina's not on the call, but she called me, she has a situation where the listing she's getting is possibly going to be going power sale. So when you have a seller that's delinquent, how do you handle that situation? Make sure if you're not familiar with it, you have to understand on what those steps are and how to do the calculations. Because if you have a seller that's delinquent today, 3 months today, how far back are they on the taxes? when's the excuse me, when's the closing date going to be? Have to understand that if they are delinquent already, there will be increased legal fees, there'll be late fees. You need to find out who the lender is. Ask the lender and say, we're listing the property, we're listing it at this realistic price. Anticipated sale date would be within 2 weeks with a closing date. I told her just to project to the end of June. The lenders do not want to own the houses. They would rather get their cash out. And so if you can do the calculations, but you have to make sure you project to the closing date, not the day of you're talking about the listing.
Also, many will owe more than it's worth.
In some
If you're
cases,
getting a listing, you
Yeah.
may not get paid.
in some cases,
In
they will owe more. There is the possibility you will get paid if you can work with the lawyer and with the institutions. I had a situation where the seller wasn't going to have any money coming out of it. And there was a first and a second. I worked with the lawyer, and this was only 7 years ago, probably. I worked with the lawyer and the lending institutions to the point where it got right down to where we were able to close the deal. Instead of me getting 2.5%, I got 1.5%, but the deal closed. So there are ways you can make that work. Again, the institutions do not want to take over the property. And that's why it's really important you know the numbers. You know the numbers, you can see where the value is. And then if you are, one of the things, if you are going to represent a buyer on buying a power of sale, understand that has anybody done one? Has anybody ever sold a power of sale
Is it selling agent?
as the buyer's agent?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What challenges did you have with your buyer?
Crossed off clauses,
Crossed off clauses?
no warranty.
Yeah,
No
they won't
warrant.
let you do any inspections. The first offer always
But you
comes
can do
back.
an
I've done a
inspection.
couple.
Okay.
They never take the first
No
offer.
inspections,
Never.
no warranties. Now, this particular one, they were great. They said, hey, you go do all the inspections you want. Do it. Right? Do it. And the biggest one that you have to understand is there are no warranties, no representations. And what's the other factor if there's no warranties and no representations? What's the other one in a standard as is? Yeah, that's all, no representation, no warranties. What's one of the challenges?
The lender of the buyer.
Lender of the buyer, because they get concerned with the condition of the property, they get concerned with valuation. But there's one in the clause, even before you get to the lender, there's a clause in the agreement.
Buyer can sue that. Or the seller can come back.
Seller can, the right of redemption, but I'm referencing a specific clause. And if you think of the standard residential offer, how do you handle HST in residential? Normally residential we put in, included in. When you do a power of sale, they put in addition to. Because they are not representing anything. They're not gonna.
Even though it's not gonna be HST, you have to prepare the buyer.
Now that's where you really have to know the product. You have to know the use. What was, if it was a residential house on a main street used as an office and it had part of commercial zoning, there could be HST applicable to that. In the actual agreement of purchase and sale, if you actually read the HST clause, it states that the seller will actually sign an affidavit saying that they are representing there is no HST applicable. Do you think the bank's gonna do that? Not a chance. So this came up at our particular agreement. That's why I'm bringing it to everybody's attention. If you are going to represent a buyer, you have to really make sure they understand, and you have to be able to show the CRA, if the CRA comes, that that house was a residential property, used as residential property. At no time was it a commercial zoning, commercial use. So depending on the product, depending on what you're buying as a power sale, that's one of the aspects that you really have to look at. Over and above the as-is condition and all that stuff, but the HST. Hunter, you bought a couple of yourself. What's your experience been with that? Any challenges? Where do you go? Just that, okay. He's bought a couple himself, so I just want to know if he's there. He can certainly explain to us. So, okay. Anybody else representing? Julia, have you done a power sale representing the buyer?
No, I was the seller agent a
Seller?
long time ago too. Mhm.
Okay.
And then
And
if it's a
and
condo-
honestly, the bank was so helpful. Like the finance company was really helpful, and you're right, they just wanted off the property. They gave me their number, and we reverse mathed it out, and my client got a little bit of money, but not that much.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Because they are opportunities. And I'll tell you who they're opportunities for. Anybody that is a renovator. They're looking for projects right now. A power sale can be an opportunity for them. Anybody that's used, the idea of, I've always wanted to buy and flip a house. This would be the marketplace to be able to look at any type of power sales, but you have to understand the procedure and the timelines of how the banks work or power sale work. They get they basically end up getting 3 independent appraisals. They will look at those appraisals. In this particular case, they started the listing price at the highest appraised value plus, I think, 5%. Then they will wait a certain number of days before they do any type of adjustment. And they will also then if you're putting the offer in, they will give increment signbacks to a point then to where if it doesn't fall within a range of where those appraisals came, they will not accept it until after a longer period of time. All right, Hunter, you're good to go.
I might be. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
You can hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I could write a book on foreclosure, buying a foreclosures. I did too. What I would highlight to everybody now, mine were rural properties. And so there's a lot more going on in the background because, as you said, there's no inspections. You can't test the well, you can't test the septic, you can't test the water. So all that really stops you with a lender. So you're almost going out for private money in most rural situations, or you're going to get a very poor loan to value. But what I did on both of my acquisitions, one ran for 8 months. I had the property tied up for 8 months. I spent $8,000 in due diligence, but it was a special situation where the bank realized they weren't going to sell to anybody but me, so they gave me the right to do home inspections and things. However, I always put in what I called sort of like a secret clause. I sort of wrote in. I'll give you the example on the property that I'm currently in. I knew that there was going to be problems if I wanted to build a garage or an outbuilding on the property. So I put in a clause saying that the purchaser had the right to, reach out to the city and all the municipalities to ensure that The property was zoned for a residential home and with an attached garage. And it didn't have an attached garage. So that was my walk away clause because I knew the town wasn't allowing you to build a garage. I had a meeting with the counselor and the lead planner, and I got approval to do it prior to closing, but it was my out clause. My first house that I bought, there had been a fire in the house that hadn't been disclosed. And so I had the fire department write me a report on it. And I just found that out from going and knocking on the neighbor's door and introducing myself and saying, I want to buy the house across the road. What can you tell me about it? And he was thrilled that, he had a Canadian coming over that wasn't going to park trucks and things on it. And so he was very helpful. And I had that in my back pocket because, as you said, you don't mess with the banks when you're doing a power of sale. If you fall down on your deal, they'll come after you and sue the pants off you. So you have to be very, very careful. The house that I'm in now, I would have never represented a client to buy this property. I mean, I got a steal of a deal, but there was just too many problems with it. And again, I've been sued for $1 million by a neighbor who lost the property, but I had all my ducks in order and I have no concerns. Now, I bought the property for probably 50% of its value. So I was prepared to take that chance. But as Scott said, if you're getting into a power of sale, be extremely careful. Pick up the phone and call Scott before you submit an offer.
Yeah, it's but there are opportunities, right? So that's the thing. They can be opportunities, and you just need to know how to walk through them. There's no emotion to it. So like you could submit an offer on a power sale and you'll hear nothing. And the agents literally most of the time, the listing agents really have no influence in the beginning until it's been on the market a while because the banks are following standard protocol because they need to have their, let's call it, they need to have their file intact to the point where they can go, here were the appraisals, here's the time, here's the price we started at, here's the length of time it was exposed to the market, here's the other offers that we received at these valuations, here's the one we accepted, here's the negotiation on that offer, because they need to, if they do get challenged, they need to represent, they tried to get as much money for the property as possible. So if you're going to be dealing with putting an offer in, just prep your clients and yourself that it's going to be a slow process. Okay. So we did that and we got success. So, which is great. Anything else going on? Anybody else have? Okay. I am possibly, we have the one listing in Thorold. I'm getting, at least yesterday I was told I'm getting the other one that he has. I'm going to get it at the beginning of May. I'm probably going to get the 5 lots for sale. The challenge though is I'm going to be looking for agents that want to do the open houses in Thorold. So if you are, we have been putting it out. We've had a couple agents do that, but I'm anticipating when this weather gets better, there will be more activity there. And I know it's a fair jaunt depending where you live. But I am going to look at trying to add somebody to my team that possibly can work on the Thorold areas. So if that's one of you, let me know. But it would be because we are going to have a couple, we'll have 2 physical listings in the area, plus 5 to 7 lots as well. So, okay.
What about our Niagara office? Nobody.
Diane did do an open house for me. But yeah, but I need to, because it's, I need to have somebody that's going to be willing to work it and work with the team to do that, because it could mean, I also know he has other projects, or he's got other land all over the place. So when the market was busy, he was hiring the cheapest agents because he figured he didn't need, they just needed order taker, paper pushers. It's interesting how after the market has switched, he's come back and anyways. So if anybody's interested, let me know. If not, I will gonna try and recruit an agent from that area that can work on this project. Anything else? There is, Michelle and I have signed up. There is, I think she put it out to everybody tomorrow.
Yep.
There's the new GST HST housing rebate, starts at 11 a.m. put on by BMO. It is doing really more of an explanation on how it works, how the credit works. Talking with our builder yesterday, his philosophy is the buyers are gonna have to pay the price that is there. They are going to change some clauses in their agreement of purchase and sale, where it talks about the builder is gonna get the rebate, the buyer signs the rebate. Because I will tell you, builders have been told by the government before, and this was his words. He said, "Oh yeah, we've been told by the government before about these incentives and programs. And we, as the builders, were the ones that had to apply to the government to get paid from the government. They're still fighting them on some of the incentives the governments over the years have done." So when it comes to this new GST housing rebate, builders are very reluctant to say that they'll take on applying to the government for the rebate. So even though it sounds like it's a great opportunity, this builder basically said, we are not going to take on the fact of letting them reduce the price and will apply to the government. We can certainly, and that's why we're going through this course, because we want to make sure that we understand it and what documents we can put together, what forms there are. So the way it's supposed to work is the buyers need to submit to the CRA once they've closed, and they need to make sure that they're eligible. The builder is not going to verify if they're an eligible buyer or not. They're not. That's the CRA is actually the one that once you put your application in for the rebate, the CRA is the one that's going to determine if you are an eligible buyer for the rebate or not. So.
Is that an online meeting, or I may have missed that link? Okay, I'll look for it.
Yeah, no, it's online. It's open to anybody. You can just sign up. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to find out. So that's why we're doing it, because we just got one of my longtime past clients sold their townhouse and sold them a detached Mississauga, and I pulled the file. It was 2,000. This is the benefit of newsletters. I'm going to tell you right now. We put our newsletter went out, and we did switch newsletters at the end of the year because the company I'd been using for many, many years decided they weren't doing them anymore. So we switched over to the KITS program, keep in touch systems, and the newsletters. I've had compliments. We've only sent out 2, I guess. I've had compliments from some of my clients. So these are way better, way more informative, easier. I'm over the weekend, get a notification and I'm going, somebody signed up on my website, on our team website. And I'm going, crap, that looks like one of my clients. So I reached out and I said, "Hey, Peter, it's been a while. I see you're on my site. Thanks for registering." Yeah, we just got your newsletter. And, I said, "What are you looking at doing?" He says, "Well, I'm not looking at doing anything. My son is looking at buying something. And got your newsletter and saw you, we registered for your site." I said, "Well, you let your son know. He's a first-time buyer. We work really well with first-time buyers. My daughter's on my team now, and she was first-time buyer last year, so we work really well. We have all the programs, blah, 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 blah." And I said, let your son know if he has any questions to reach out. 2 days later, I got son signing up on our on our website. Reached out, and turns out, I just say, if you got time for a call this week, we had our call yesterday. Pre-qualified, $250,000 down payment, wants to live in Kitchener, gave us the area, wants to spend around $700,000. So, moral of the story, you tell me that hard copy, mailed direct to your database doesn't work, I'll challenge you anytime. That's the moral of the story today. Anything else? Okay. Michelle will send out that link again for anybody that wants to participate on that. If it's not you, but if you think of an agent, if in the Thorold area, Niagara region, that wants to get involved with doing lots of open houses and picking up some clients, because I think once this weather comes, and there's other builders in the area, the builders are really promoting it with the rebates. So we'll go from there. And then next week we have on the 16th, we have our event. If you haven't registered and are coming, please do just RSVP to Michelle, just so we can give the banquet hall numbers, just so we have it. We hope to see everybody there next week. That's next week tomorrow.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Anything else before we sign off?
I have a question. Tomorrow at 11, you said that there's a presentation. How do we watch that?
Yeah, I'm gonna send out the link again. It's just a webinar. So you'll just be able to register for free and you get sent the link and then you can just log on. We'll be watching it in the office if you're coming.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for participating. Good to see everybody. There's business out there. Just pick up the phone and talk to people. Okay. See everybody later.